Venice and Venetians boast a long and illustrious history closely tied to European development, particularly in the spheres of trade, art, and politics. A city built on 118 small islands in the Adriatic Sea in northeastern Italy, Venice possesses a history as distinct as its geography. Located strategically between the west and the east, Venice not only mastered the Mediterranean trade routes, but also flourished as a hotbed of art and culture. The Venetians' affluent past reflects the enduring and groundbreaking spirit of a people who turned a marshy land into a Renaissance icon of power and beauty. Venice's inception is steeped in mystery and myth, its origins dating back to the bleak days of the Western Roman Empire's collapse, as the Germanic barbarians and later the Huns began to invade the Italian peninsula during the 5th century. Many locals, especially from the Veneto territory, fled to the swampy islands of the Venetian lagoon. They provided shelter from the invaders, owing to their difficult access and challenging environment. The refugees, over time, started to form communities on the lagoon's many islands. They worked out techniques to create housing and infrastructure within this unique setting, using wooden stakes to construct solid foundations in the muddy soil. When the situation on the peninsula settled down, the lagoon communities consolidated into a single political entity. By 726 AD, the lagoon inhabitants appointed their first doge, named Orsoipado. A doge, in Venetian parlance, was the title given to the supreme leader of the Republic of Venice. The term doge came from the Latin dux, meaning leader or commander. The doge ruled Venice for over 1,000 years, his role like that of a duke or monarch in other European states. But the system of government in Venice had its own republican qualities. Venice grew in power and influence over the centuries, leveraging its strategic position to become a commanding Mediterranean trading power. It became a mercantile hub between the West and the East, mediating relations between the Byzantine Empire and Western Europe. Something that initially emerged as a refuge for those who fled invasions turned into one of the most influential and long-lasting maritime republics in European history. Throughout the centuries, Venice and the Byzantine Empire enjoyed a complex and varied relationship. Throughout much of its early history, Venice was a Byzantine protectorate. As the city grew in wealth and influence, it started to operate more independently, eventually becoming a commercial contender and, on occasion, a military challenger. Venice's independence from the Byzantine Empire happened gradually. As it strengthened its maritime power and opened trade routes, Venice steadily began to develop an empire that covered territories beyond the capital city, encompassing parts of the Italian mainland, Adriatic islands, and even eastern Mediterranean territories. Relations between Venice and the Byzantine Empire came to a head during the Fourth Crusade. Although originally aimed at retaking the Holy Land, the crusade was shifted to Constantinople because of scheming and manipulation, many of which involved Venetian interests. The Crusaders, assisted by a vital Venetian naval force, plundered Constantinople in 1204, effectively putting an end to the Byzantine Empire and establishing the so-called Latin Empire. And Venice profited enormously from this outcome, obtaining extensive territories and influence, including major islands and trading enclaves in the Aegean Sea. There was never a significant change in the relationship between Venice and the empire. Even after the Byzantine Empire was restored in 1261, Venice went on to dominate Mediterranean trade, whilst the Byzantine Empire underwent a long period of decline until its final collapse in 1453 to the Ottomans. Venice's politics and nobility were inextricably bound together, the city's system of government being distinct from many of its European counterparts. Venice's political system was a sort of oligarchic republic, where the doge often served as a ceremonial figurehead. The real power resided in the councils formed by the city's merchant elite. Several councils had critical positions in the Venetian government. The Major Council, the main legislative body, formed by all adult male members of the Venetian nobility, in charge of establishing laws and policies. The Council of Ten, established in the 13th century. It was one of Venice's most powerful bodies, in charge of security and foreign policy. It also played a crucial role in electing the doge. Finally, the minor council, assisting the Doge in his administrative and judicial duties. The Venetian noble elite was not founded on land ownership, as it was elsewhere in medieval Europe. Instead, wealth and prestige were often derived from trade and active involvement in the Republic's matters. Venetian nobles were strongly engaged in trade and often financed commercial expeditions and ships. This intertwining of trade and nobility was one of Venice's hallmarks, and the wealth brought about by trade contributed to Venice becoming a bustling hotspot of art and culture throughout the Renaissance. The city drew artists and intellectuals, while the Venetian school of painting spawned masters such as Titian, Veronese, and Tintoretto. Both Venice and Genoa were major maritime and commercial powerhouses in the Mediterranean during the Middle Ages and the early modern period. An intense competition between these two republics was inevitable, as both tried to expand and control trade routes and strategic territories in the Mediterranean. Their interests often clashed, particularly on the routes to the Levant and the Middle East, where both cities pursued the profitable spice trade. Venice and Genoa were embroiled in several wars from the 12th to the 14th centuries, known as the Venetian-Genoese Wars. These conflicts were frequently brutal and had a major impact on both republics. The First Venetian-Genoese War raged from 1257 to 1270. It was sparked by territorial squabbles in the Levant, with both cities owning colonies and outposts in the region. A series of smaller scuffles and conflicts eventually led to a full-scale war. It ended without a clear winner, but tensions lingered. Between 1294 and 1299, the Second Venetian-Genoese War was prompted by commercial and territorial strains between the two seafaring powers. The high point of this conflict was the 1298 Battle of Curzola. The Genoese fleet inflicted a heavy defeat on the Venetians during this engagement. Marco Polo, the famous Venetian traveler, was seized by the Genoese after this clash and spent several years in captivity in Genoa. The Third Venetian-Genoese War took place between 1350 and 1355. This started due to Black Sea rivalries, when Venice sought to restore its influence in the region after earlier defeats. The war concluded with a treaty that reinstated the balance of power between the two forces, with both cities retaining their territories and influence. The Fourth Venetian-Genoese War, from 1378 to 1381, was perhaps the most shattering of all between the cities. It started because of quarrels in Cyprus and quickly spread to the Mediterranean. The 1380 Battle of Chioggia was a turning point, with Genoa laying siege to the town of Chioggia, near Venice. Despite this, the Venetians succeeded in changing the course of the battle and finally defeated the Genoese, resulting in the signing of the Peace of Turin in 1381. In the wake of the Fourth War, while rivalries and tensions persisted, no further large-scale military conflicts took place between Genoa and Venice. The rise of other European powers, the slow decline of the seafaring republics, and changing trade routes helped the two cities concentrate on other challenges and opponents. Venice's demise started in the 15th century, when trade routes were shifted due to major geographical discoveries. The Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama's discovery of a sea route to India around Africa, as an example, lessened Venice's relevance as a crossing point between East and West. The Ottoman Empire's ascendancy in the eastern Mediterranean was a major threat to Venice. Cities and territories previously under Venetian control were progressively taken over by the Ottomans, including strategic locations such as Cyprus and Crete. Other European powers, such as England and the Netherlands, started to establish their own global trading empires in the 17th century, challenging Venice's commercial dominance even further. Venice's independence was dealt a final blow in 1797, when Napoleon Bonaparte's forces stormed the city. While it was not a primary target, the military and political pressure brought about the end of the Venetian Republic. In May of that year, Ludovico Manin, the last Doge, stepped down and dissolved the 1,000-year-old Major Council, ending more than 1,000 years of Venetian independence. Following Napoleon's defeat in 1814, the Congress of Vienna was summoned to reorder Europe. Part of its proceedings, Venice was declared part of the Austrian dominions, making it part of the Kingdom of Lombardy-Venetia under Austrian rule. After the Third Italian War of Independence in 1866, Venice and the Veneto region were annexed to the newly established Kingdom of Italy. Venice is now one of the world's most popular tourist destinations. The city lures millions of visitors every year, flocking to see its famed canals, historic landmarks such as the Doge's Palace and St. Mark's Basilica, and events such as the Venice Carnival and the Venice Film Festival. The Venetians' history is a quest from their humble origins as refugees to their emergence as one of Europe's greatest maritime and trading powers. Their historical legacy lives on in Venice due to its tourist and cultural appeal.